create an entire conference just to get me to come visit. I kid, obviously. This is such a great event, and I really feel fortunate to be part of it. And you know, obviously, as Stacey said, and thank you for that lovely introduction. You give me way too much credit, but I'll take it. Okay. Stacey is obviously a very accomplished woman, so to have her say wonderful things like that about me is, of course, incredibly humbling. So I didn't mean to send everyone into an existential crisis this morning when you walked in. All of a sudden you're faced with, who are you? Who am I? Holy cow. Well, hopefully we'll find some ways to figure that out and figure out how you can best portray yourself and in an authentic way on social media and at business functions and socially, and however it is you want to present yourself. Authenticity, I think, is a bit of a buzzword right now, so I almost don't like using it. Anytime you tell me that something's a fad, I'm going to immediately write about it and then move on and forget about it, because that's what journalists do. We're kind of the original hipsters. That's so 2 years ago. So, which that's very inauthentic of me. So I start with who are you because, it really is what we need to figure out before we can create a personal brand if we want people to believe what it is we're putting out there and what we're considering as our personal brand. And not only that, but, if you don't know who you are, then how are you going to be intentional about what you're putting out there? And we're all putting something out there whether we realize it or not. Everybody has a digital footprint now. Even, I think they said, the researchers who look at these things, 2-year-olds have a digital footprint because mom and dad are putting stuff out there. Apparently you have to be careful about that because your child can sue you later. So keep that in mind. So who are you? We have to start with our story, as Rachel, our keynote speaker, so beautifully presented earlier today, this morning. Everybody does have a story, and some parts of that story are beautiful. It talks about your accomplishments. It's all the stuff we want people to see. And as Rachel so astutely pointed out, for those of you that saw her talk, some of it's messy, and some of it makes you feel kind of ashamed of yourself. But all of it is part of who you are. Now, as Stacey said, I'm from Kentucky originally. I lived in Texas for about 12 years. God bless Texas. Our neighbors there, they have big heads and big hearts, and a lot of them are suffering right now, and I've seen a lot of the big hearts here helping them. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of people in Mobile over the past few years since Stacey's lived here. Every time there is a crisis, you all just jump in and you send truckloads of supplies and money and love, and I'm watching you do that with our friends in Florida and our friends in Texas, and it's really a beautiful thing to watch. So I've lived in Texas for 12 years, and now I live in New Orleans. Someday maybe I'll be in Alabama as well, if I'm lucky. It's a good place. And my story in Kentucky started out with me being a student, an artist, then a wife, always a traveler, and always a silly person. And for a long time, unfortunately, I didn't realize that I was allowed to be a silly person in public or in certain venues or perhaps at work. Thankfully, I figured out that if somebody or an entity or a workplace doesn't want me to be a silly person, I probably shouldn't be there. So I worked my way up as a reporter at a community paper in Austin. It was called the Pflugerville Flag. That is spelled Pflugerville. And every press release and every story had every word that had an F in it with a P before it, and it nearly drove me to madness as an editor. So thankfully, at some point, I was removed from the beloved Pflugerville. Hi, Adam, how are you? Come on in. We met at a party last night, You may not realize it, but Addie's a party animal. Very fun at parties. Invite her to yours. So I left my beloved community newspaper. Prior to that, I had been an intern at the Austin Monthly Magazine, which put a little bug in me. It kind of planted a seed, and I really loved magazines. But as a reporter, you go where you can get a job. So I got a job at a community paper. I got a job at the Austin American-Statesman as a reporter covering interior design, which, yes, is a real thing that a person can do. And I was a columnist there, and I was given such a great opportunity. And I really jumped in with both feet and worked very hard to get noticed and do hard work and make them happy that they hired me. So unfortunately, that meant I had to pretend to not be silly a lot of the time, which I didn't like. Well, I squashed that down, and I went with it. And ultimately, I ended up becoming the press secretary and speechwriter for First Lady Anita Perry, Rick Perry's wife, the governor's wife. And there was not much opportunity for silliness there either. I mean, this is politics. Thankfully, I got to write speeches for her about really wonderful things, because I'm not really into being on the political side of things. I got to write about causes that she was very drawn to, and she was a nurse, so one of those causes was the March of Dimes and children and women's health. And I got to write wonderful speeches for her during Breast Cancer Awareness Month for Susan G. Komen Foundation. And I got to write speeches for her about historic preservation. The governor's mansion had not too long prior to me taking that job been burned down. It was a case of arson that still remains unsolved. And one of her big causes at the time had always been historic preservation, but now more than ever, because she was helping the different preservation entities raise money for getting the mansion back to its original glory, and it's really beautiful, and they did a fine job. Far after I left, they finished it, and if you ever have a chance to go there, it's right in the shadow of that gorgeous Capitol, and it's really worth a tour. It's lovely. So I did that for about a year, and then I got recruited to work at the Archdiocese of Houston, Galveston, for their archdiocesan newspaper as the managing editor. And I really missed journalism, and still was missing being silly, but this sounded like a really important job. My boss would be the cardinal. I don't know if you know this, but cardinals are the guys who are kind of the deputies to the Pope. So that felt very strange and important, and like something I really wanted to do, just because I thought it would be fascinating. So I wrote for that newspaper and was the managing editor of it for about a year, and then I got recruited again. So that recruitment led to a job as a senior reporter covering design at the Houston Chronicle. Once again, no room for silliness. I mean, I just don't understand how we can be in a features department at a newspaper and nobody wants to have fun. And I think it was at that point that I realized that this just wasn't working for me. I needed to kind of not just be in an atmosphere that didn't take itself so seriously and didn't want me to take myself so seriously. And I don't really even know how I came to this, other than sort of feeling restricted by my editors and feeling as though maybe dressing up every day wasn't for me, and being there certain times of day wasn't for me. And it had been that way for many, many years at that point for me with the different jobs I had. And I just, with Stacy's support and encouragement, and the support and encouragement of many other people in my life, I decided that I would quit and become a freelancer, which is scary. It's so scary. Even though I really kind of checked the wins and made sure that this was a good time to be a freelancer, which it was, unfortunately for newsrooms and for us as the news-consuming public. Newsrooms are being gutted across the country, and they have been for 10 or 12 years, really since my entire career. The heydays that I heard about from the older reporters of wild parties in the newsroom and drinking and making lots of money were long gone before I showed up. It was all business and very little pay. It's, I think, always going to be very little pay. But, as a freelancer, it was a very good thing because they want to hire freelancers so that they don't have to pay you insurance and they don't have to give you benefits. And, they don't care where you are, what you're doing, as long as you turn in that copy. And they wanted lots of freelancers. So I was never at a loss for work. I was never in a place where I had to worry about whether or not I was going to get work. And that was a good place to be. And I did that for about a year. And during this time, another part of my story is that because I think I lost sight of who I was and I wasn't happy, and, again, Rachel talked a little bit about this too. On the outside, it may have looked like, hey, she has everything together. She's a senior reporter at the Houston Chronicle. She's a former press secretary to the governor's wife. And all of those things were great, but I wasn't happy. I was pretending to be happy, and I looked happy. And I had happy moments and happy days, but I think I kind of took all of my unhappiness out on my husband, and he and I split up. And we were apart for about a year, and around the time I became a freelancer, he and I kind of started talking again. In Texas, you have to wait 6 months before you can get a divorce if you don't have children. It's a year if you do have children. And we were about at the 6-month mark when we started speaking to each other again in sort of civil, normal, kind of jokey ways. And I think we both realized that there was still something there. And at the heart of our relationship had always been friendship. And we went ahead and got our divorce, which sounds really weird, even now coming out of my mouth. And it was even weirder at the time because we did it with the intention that we wanted a fresh start. So after 14 years of marriage, we got divorced. And then a few months later, we pretty much got back together. So we are not married. I call him my husband just because it's easier at parties to just say, this is my husband, not, this is my ex-husband, partner? I don't know. So, it was a weird way to end up in a better place, but ultimately we ended up in a better place. And, I don't regret it. And he recently started calling me his wife again in casual settings, which was sort of a really lovely moment because it took a long time, I think, for him to get to that place. As women, I think we're quicker to accept labels, if you will. We may not like them, but I think we don't mind as much. And he kind of needed a little more time. So very contrary to my inability to be patient, I was patient with him on that point. So that comes to me moving to New Orleans with Mark for our fresh start. And we needed a new city and we needed a place that was neutral and that we both loved. And, a lot of people get seduced by New Orleans because she's beautiful and fabulous and mysterious and she's crazy. And, she is all of the things that I think people look for in a sort of fleeting relationship, but sometimes we go for the bad boy or the bad girl. Well, we both went for New Orleans. And we lived there for, it'll be 4 years in February. And I went there with every intention of continuing to be a freelancer, and I accidentally got a job. I went to talk to the folks at Renaissance Publishing, which publishes 8 titles. And they also do custom publishing and a lot of other stuff as well. But the titles that you probably know are New Orleans Magazine, Louisiana Life, Acadiana Profile, New Orleans Bride, New Orleans Homes and Lifestyles, most recently Biz New Orleans, and we started Acadiana Weddings. I'm the editor. I started out as the editor of New Orleans Bride because that was something I had experience with. I had been in Houston, the contract editor-in-chief of Modern Luxury Houston Brides, which really rolls right off the tongue. So at Modlux, I gained the credentials to be able to take the position as editor of New Orleans Bride, and then I also did our contract publications, kind of behind the scenes, and that was the Saints Game Day program and some port publications, nothing terribly exciting or sexy, but it paid the bills, sort of. I mean, I'm a journalist, so we don't get paid how much. I think I mentioned that. So then I became the editor of, one of our other editors left, and I became the editor of 3 more of our publications. Then we started another publication, Acadiana Weddings. Now I'm the editor of 5 of our publications. So all of them except that I mentioned, except for New Orleans Magazine and Biz New Orleans, which I also contribute to because I'm a glutton for punishment. So that's what I do in my professional life and what I have done for about 17 years. And in my personal life, another thing that, as Rachel said, those things that people don't necessarily see on the surface, but something that has really informed me and how I operate as a person and how I navigate life and my joie de vivre, if you will, which the next thing I'm going to say is probably going to sound weird after just saying joie de vivre, is that my mother was addicted to prescription drugs my entire life. I really don't know her as a person not addicted. And it was worse sometimes than others. She and my dad got divorced when I was 7. They were together 10 years. And, I have to say that I probably was luckier than most who've had a mother who's addicted, because I had a lot of great other nurturers in my life who mothered me, my father included. So when you look at somebody and they seem to have their stuff together and they have a great career and they have a loving husband, that's part of my story. It's not what everybody sees, but it, again, has informed who I am. And having an addictive mother forces you to realize that you have to learn how to mother yourself. And that's what Rachel talked about. And that took me, I'm 44. I think I was 40 when I figured that out. So it takes some time. But if you work at it, if you do the things that Rachel said to do, which I have a couple of those tips as well, you'll figure that out and you'll learn how to mother yourself. And the reason all of this is important to finding your personal brand is because you have to look at those kind of ugly things, or the things that you think are ugly, to get to the beautiful things and the things that you want to put out there as well. Because you have to kind of find a little fearlessness to be able to embrace all of that, the good, the bad, the ugly. In Buddhism, they have a concept where emotions, none of them are bad or good. They all are just things that are there. So anger can serve a purpose. Happiness, obviously it's lovely, we all want to be happy. That's what we're all searching for every day. But it is the same as anger. It's just an emotion, it's fleeting, it'll go away. So just like those sort of bad things that have happened to us, or that we've done to other people, they inform who we are. They're part of our story. And it's not just me telling you that you need to figure out your story. The experts agree. Look at articles on Business Insider. Look at articles on Forbes. I read one recently by Shama Hader. She is a CEO and I think the founder as well of an outfit called Marketing Zen. One of her steps in creating your personal brand is to figure out your story. So that's my story. And what's interesting is all of those things, including editor, champagne aficionado, and nap enthusiast there at the end, are part of me and my story. But how are those all tied together? What is the common thread? Because that's really what I needed to figure out when I was tasked with starting social media channels back in 2004, when very few of us were using Twitter or Facebook, except maybe college students. And I had to figure out, how am I going to use this thing? Is it going to be for work? Is it going to be personal? Maybe Twitter will be for work. Maybe Facebook will be personal. I had to kind of work through those steps, and then it evolved because I can't use Facebook the same way as a press secretary to the governor's wife. I didn't shut it completely down, but nobody could look at anything without my permission. if you were a friend of mine, you couldn't tag anything, no one could see anything unless I gave approval on it. Because, you don't want to have a picture of yourself at a party and somebody misconstrue an innocent glass of champagne as you being loaded and acting like a lunatic, which I try not to do, but no promises. So, what was the common thread? The common thread for me as I looked at my life, I'm a photographer, I'm an editor, I am a reporter, I do a lot of things, I love to cook, I am in a relationship with my husband still somehow, my ex-husband. I couldn't really find the common thread. And in photography school, one of my teachers, she told us to look through all of our photos from, the year, or perhaps just a full roll of film, which is what we were using in 2000. So you would look at all of the photos, you'd spread them out in front of you. Because if you were struggling to find out what your show should be about, or what any cohesive body of work was from all of this shooting that you had been doing, if you put them all in front of you, printed, you would start to see a common something. There would be maybe light, lots of photos about light, or lots of portraits, or a lot of architectural photography, or whatever. There would be a common theme, maybe several common themes of groupings, but you would find it if you put it all out in front of you. So I sort of started putting everything out in front of myself. And the common theme that I discovered was lifestyle. So food, design, beauty, weddings, style, travel, entertaining, beautiful landscapes, just living. That was sort of my common theme, and that really worked out because I was a lifestyle writer at the time. I was writing about interior design. So that became the thing that I sort of focused on with my social media in particular, especially when Instagram came around, because as a photographer, I just kind of jumped in feet first with that one. And I really love that medium. So I have a tendency to kind of hang out there more than anywhere else. I cross-post a lot to Facebook. But the common themes, as you see, a little bit of adventure. That's me trying not to kill myself on the paddleboard. I never stood up. I'm very clumsy, so trust me, that was a good thing. I didn't want to lose my prescription sunglasses. You have to know yourself, which I mentioned in here. Silliness, I try not to overly curate, because then it seems fake. So I'll occasionally show silliness or, a bad photo of myself. There are many. That's my husband, Mark, ex-husband, Mark, picking kelp out of my hair on the beach, because it was a really kelpy day that day. But that did not stop us from getting in the water. So, you kind of get a sense of what I do and who I am from the photos that I post and the things that I put on social media, and hopefully also when you meet me at a networking event or at a social function. I feel like my real persona and my online persona mesh up pretty well, because I'm trying really hard not to be fake about it, tossing in a little variety, and it's not all every single time just these pretty polished photos. The photographer in me wants them to be as good as they can be, but occasionally it's just a good, fun thing that I'm celebrating, and I put it on there. So occasionally I will do direct promotion, and those direct promotion posts generally are, I'm going to go on WWL TV and do a segment for New Orleans Pride or New Orleans Winds and Lifestyles. We did a beauty story about Clarisonic, and so I'll talk about a beauty story you should read in this cheaper version of the Clarisonic called Conair Pure Glow. $49, $39 on sale. I love a sale. So I told my Instagram followers, you can buy the Clarisonic that we wrote about, or you can buy the $30 version, because Clarisonic's I think about $200. And I love the thing. $30, go get one. Louisiana Life, I'll post stuff that's directly about magazines, whether it's an article or the newest cover or what have you. But you try not to do too much of that, because I think your followers on social media probably get a little sick of work, 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 no matter what Brianna says. It's funny, I don't really watch TV, but social media saves me from sounding out of the loop. I watch a lot of PBS because I am a nerd. I love Masterpiece Theater, and social media also lets me know what kids are listening to. I think I've listened to that song once, but she's really good at branding. We all know work, 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 work. So how do you figure out what is your story? You have to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your passions and interests, and find that common thread. So that's the long story short right there of all the things that I just told you. My strengths are that I adapt and overcome. I put myself through college. I was the first and only person in my immediate family to finish high school, and the first and only one to go to college, and the first and only one to get a degree, and the first and only one to get subsequent training and professional degrees and classes. I still am. And I'm the white sheep of the family, I guess. Really, I was set up for success because my mom got pregnant in high school and by my dad, and they were a match made in heaven. And then my brother got his girlfriend pregnant in high school. Lots of people in my family have been in prison. So I felt like if I could just get out of high school without getting pregnant, much less graduating in the top 10% of my class and going on to college, I mean, like, just getting out of college without having a child was a huge milestone. I admire women who do have children in high school and go on to get their education, whether it's their high school diploma or going on to college, because good Lord, I am not a mom. I don't aspire to be a mom, but I admire what mothers do. Can't imagine going to school and also trying to raise a baby. So anyone in here who's gone through that, good job, ladies. So identify your strengths. I am a big picture person. I am not good at nitty-gritty details, which makes me a great magazine editor. I have vision. I can shape the book and make it fabulous and have cohesion and a really strong sense of place and all the things that a magazine needs. I am not a great copy editor, so please forgive me if there are typos in my presentation. I had somebody else read it who is a copy editor, so I blame her. So identify your strengths and identify your weaknesses. If you're not good at taking pictures, then you may want to talk to a friend who is and find out how you can better use Instagram. I do find that it's never the photos that I think are going to get a lot of likes that do, and vice versa. So it doesn't really matter if they're pretty, but it helps. I mean, I think people sometimes probably follow just to see pretty sunset photos or what have you. There's that saying to surround yourself with people who are better at a lot of things than you are, because you can learn from them, and I firmly believe in that adage. Very fortunate to have a gal that works with us who, she's 20, for their perception of what you are putting out there. And that's a scary proposition, but ask somebody you trust, or maybe 5 women that you trust, to look at your social media and who know you professionally, that maybe have looked at your work or seen you at work, and have a little handout to help you with this survey. But ask them what you could do, or what you're doing right, or maybe what you're doing that's annoying. Brace yourself. They might tell you the hard truth that you shouldn't post any yoga pictures on Instagram because it makes you look full of yourself, and like you probably don't do yoga, even though she knows you do yoga, but still, that's what people think. I'm speaking from experience, yes. And the thing is, you can't please everybody all the time, so you'll get some consistency. Like, a lot of people told me, your photographs are great, post more photos. And then one person said, you post too many photos, post other stuff. And as I look at the surveys, I crack up because I'm like, you can't please everyone. But for the most part, people said the things that I wanted them to say, that I'm creative, that I'm artistic, that I'm authoritative on my subject matter. And so I could see, all right, I'm doing some good things, but just stop posting yoga photos. And then get a strategy going. Are you going to post once a day to Facebook? Are you going to post 3 times a day to Twitter? Are you going to post 3 times a day to Instagram? Figure it out and be consistent. Be consistent with your messaging, with your visuals. Be consistent with all of it. Just like you would if you were marketing your boutique that you own. You want consistency in branding. A couple people who I think do that really well in my realm are Bonjour Bohème. This is Amy Bauer Gabriel. She's the editor of New Orleans Tidbits and Austin Tidbits. She even goes so far as to use the same filter for every photo she posts, so the consistency is just brilliant because they all have that same atmosphere, no matter what the photo is. She really has a fun life. She lives between New Orleans and Austin, and she goes everywhere. Her husband has a boat. I have envy over their boat. And then Molly Kimball is a nutritionist. She does a lot of media, and she does a good job of a mixture of personal and professional as well in terms of her posts. So, always try to strike that balance, as I mentioned before. How are you going to be yourself? I kind of am going to rush through this part because Rachel covered it so well. Rest, recharge, and reflect. How else are you supposed to figure out who you are if you can't stop for 5 minutes a day and breathe and have a cup of coffee or take a walk or meditate or pray or whatever it is that floats your boat that I don't have. How are you going to figure out who you are or realize that you have this weird pain in your hip for 5 weeks or 5 months? You don't sit down and just be quiet for a minute with yourself. I almost said shut up. That's not nice. It's not what you like. Set boundaries. If you take one thing away with you today, please learn how to say no. Say it a lot. Start by saying maybe, let me check my calendar, and then say no after that to cushion the blow. But say no for God's sake so that you can do all the things that you like and not the things you dislike. You don't have to do stuff. You don't have to say yes. You can say, no, I'm going to stay home and watch Masterpiece Theater tonight. Be social. Balance the professional and the private. Be the expert. But the most important thing beyond saying no, and there's something I want you to say yes to today if you can, is to celebrate. I have this button installed in my house. I don't, actually, that's a place called Effervescence, and we're going to give you some champagne, because if I know women, I know that you like bubbles. I like bubbles. And also, this is the most beautiful sound, even more beautiful than the sound of a laughing baby. Go around, so a little bit while you're asking questions. But before we get to questions, the other thing you always have to do is give thanks. And I want to thank you all so much. I want to thank Stacy and all of the organizers of this conference. I want to thank Rachel. If you missed her talk, read her book, good Lord. I was almost in tears. And just thank all of you for taking time out of your day. I know you're all busy and you have lots to do, and you most likely have things you have to do after you drink this champagne too, but we're going to do it anyway. I did actually bring some sparkling pink grapefruit fruity drink for anyone who is a teetotaler for whatever reason. I will not judge you for having children or not drinking. But we have stuff. Questions?
Go back to that slide.
Isn't that the best? I pressed it and you're all getting champagne. It totally works. Okay, so the next one, but that's the best one. Okay, So, the handout, hopefully you all got that. And it kind of explains the questionnaire a little bit. But if you have questions, and you can ask them while getting your champagne, what are your questions? Yes, ma'am. Too much in terms of posting too often, or too many channels to keep up with? I think we all have been driven to madness with the devices and the social media channels, and that again is why it's so important to rest and reflect and recharge, and learn your likes and dislikes and say no and all that good stuff. I think you need to find the platform that works best for you and maybe be more present on that particular platform, and then not neglect the others, but maybe just maintain them in a different way, maybe not so frequently. I don't think you have to be on Facebook all day. God, don't be on Facebook all day, especially during election season. It's awful. I'm still traumatized. But, just pick what works for you. And, obviously you need to have some consistency, but it doesn't have to be 5 times a day. And honestly, if you're posting about your boutique 5 times a day, your friends are going to start dropping like flies or hiding you from their feed, because, again, you have to mix it up. You don't want to spam people, and that's kind of what it becomes, is spam, spam, spam. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am?
Have you ever used Hootsuite before?
Hootsuite is a platform that I'm sure many of you are familiar with that allows you to go to one spot. I have a deck where you're able to post to different platforms all in the same spot. I don't use that. I used to use one that was similar to that, and I really didn't like it. I sort of like going to each one and seeing the way things look in their natural habitat, if you will. So I think if that works for you, you should definitely try it out, because I think it can simplify when you're posting to multiple platforms throughout the day. Or if you have several clients that you're posting for, I think that's probably a good place to work from. But it just kind of didn't work for me. And I meditate every morning, so I know my likes and dislikes, and I knew I could say no to Hootsuite. But y'all should check it out. There are some other ones too, so just check out those platforms where you can do a lot of posting from different ones. Do you like it? Do you use it?
No, I asked because I have used it, but it seems like it doesn't allow me to post like to the rest of my friends. Even though it posts on my Facebook, like from Hootsuite into my Instagram, whatever, but it doesn't seem like it carry overs to my network.
Yeah.
Like it's stuck on
It's a little
just my
little
feed,
funky.
like just my profile.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't like.
I'm using it, so I don't think I'm using it.
Yeah, I don't like it either. But that's not. I'm not endorsing it. I guess that's a double negative. Does that mean I am endorsing it? I don't know. Any other questions, ladies? Yes.
I've often wondered about being like you're making a post and you have an option to go public with that post or keep it within your friends, and I was curious.
I forgot to mention, I have a journalist Facebook and a personal Facebook. I do post a lot of work stuff to my personal, and I network socially with a lot of people that are in my professional life. But for total strangers that I've never met, my journalist Facebook is where I engage with them. I also have all of my Instagram public, so I have to be careful not to get too saucy on Instagram. And Twitter, Lord even knows who's following me on Twitter. I don't really ever tell anybody where I am specifically on Twitter, because, I don't know who's on there. And that's public as well. I think, with Facebook, you have to be really careful, because trolls will come out even if you're just writing about eco-friendly cleansers. So, all of a sudden you think you've posted something really benign and, innocent, and some weirdo shows up that you've never met before and has no connection to any of your friends and says something really awful, and you are sort of stunned, I would say you have every right to block that person if you have made a post public and you get some weirdness. Draw your boundaries and chuck them out. Just throw them out of the party. But yeah, I would use your discretion with public posts. Yes, ma'am?
Segueing off of that question, then would you say it was important to have like personal and private profiles, or just decide which types of social media are going to be your personal ones?
Both.
So
Holly
no one
asked if you
sign.
should have public and private, or private and professional rather. And I would say that's kind of up to you. It's a personal decision. For me, in my line of work, I thought I do post a lot of personal stuff to my Facebook page, stuff that's really more just for family and friends. So I don't necessarily want the general public in on all my posts, and I don't want to have to worry about whether I marked it public. So to keep that from being an issue for me, I have separate private and professional. And then on other platforms, I don't worry so much about it. But I am an editor, so I'm good at editing not just other people, but surprisingly myself and my inner, stuff that should stay inside from not coming outside. Not always good at that. But I haven't said any curse words yet, so the editor's on. One more question, or 5 more minutes? What are we, 5 minutes? Yes, ma'am? Yes.
Would you recommend an individual brand more toward their name or more toward a company ideal? Specifically, I do a couple different things. I do coaching, and I have a name for that, I have an umbrella for coaching. But then as myself, I've authored some things, and so I'm getting ready to expand that, and I'm not certain which is the most beneficial for them. That makes sense?
Again, yes, I would say both. And the reason I say that is because I think it's important that people who are specifically looking for your coaching services have a place to go for that. But also you have these other endeavors, and you can cross-promote on each platform. So if you have a website for, what is your name?
Debbie Smith.
For DebbieSmith.com.
DR Smith.
I was gonna say, there's probably a lot of Debbie Smiths out
They
there.
are. I put myself in I got rich married recently, and I was more individualized when I was with a stranger. Now I'm Debbie Smith, and I'm basic.
Great. You're not basic. So I would do both, and on your DebbieSmith.com or drsmith.com have a page that says something about your coaching services that diverts you, has a little info like splash page, and then diverts you to your other website for your services. And then vice versa, on your coaching website, have a link to your DR Smith website so that people can see your things that you've authored and whatever lives on that space. For me, for years, I couldn't figure out how to work all the stuff that I did onto one website, because it just sounded like a lot of work to have more than one, because really, in essence, I am lazy. I'm just really good at some things, and so it seems like I do a lot. I just do the things that are easy. Maintaining multiple websites didn't sound easy to me, so that was when I figured out all of it's lifestyle. Yay! I can just put all of it on this one website and call it a day. And so for me, that's what worked. But if you're finding it difficult to marry the two onto one website, then have two that cross-promote. Any other questions? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when it comes to consistency on posting, I kind of struggle. I'm actually a Disney vacation planner, and so
That sounds fun.
It is. I want to go on vacation. And so on Tuesday, I do a tip every week of things to do in the parks, like if you're going with kids, that kind of thing. And then on Saturdays, I feature like a dessert or a sweet treat, is what I call it. And it never fails. Saturday morning, I have every intention of posting one, and then next thing I know, it's 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah.
So would you recommend using an app like Free Post or Easy Post or something like that?
I would.
That way I can do it maybe Friday afternoon, and then it'll post on
If you find that the what, yes, ma'am? Yes, please do.
Facebook lets you schedule posts.
Does it let you do that on your personal page? I know it lets me on my journalist page, but not on my personal.
Okay, we need to talk.
Yeah, y'all huddle over your champagne. Oh, by the way, this is RSVP Brut sparkling wine from Trader Joe's. It's $7 a bottle. It's a little more expensive than the Trader Joe's Blanc de Blanc, but great for parties. But I love that it's called RSVP because when I was listening to Rachel's talk this morning, the thought occurred to me that in a way she's RSVPing to her life, and I think we all should. Do you need some more champagne?
She needs to talk to you.
She needs to talk to you about a vacation to Disney. That sounds fun. So RSVP to this bottle of sparkling wine. My French friend would kill me for calling it champagne. Whatever. RSVP to your life. RSVP to celebrating, even if it's just celebrating being here on a Friday at 12 o'clock. 11:15, whatever time it is. It's always 4 months ahead to me. I think it's January right now. That's why I'm wearing a scarf and a jacket, because I'm always working ahead. Are we done? Okay, thank you so much.